This is Fireside Chat with me, Johnny B.
Hey guys, how's it going? Welcome back to Fireside Chats with Johnny B. I'm Josh Bird, and we're continuing part 2 of Johnny's story. So he's right back in the hot seat. So you want to kick us off? You want to kick us off again, man?
All right. So where were we on the last
conversation? Trying to scratch my head and think.
Marines,
right?
Can't trust y'all to remember things. Let's see. I think we were going over.
You finished up with your experience with the horrible leadership, and I think you kind of started tapering off of that.
Yeah. So I had just gone to NJP, got busted down from E6 to E5, living in that situation, still had the same horrible leadership. But now comes March 2011. So if some of y'all will remember, March 2011 in Japan was the large earthquake off of the coast of Sendai in Japan, right? It was like a 9.1 magnitude. Huge. So big, in fact, that scientists have actually figured out that earthquake was so strong that it actually knocked the Earth's axis off tilt by like 1/4 of an inch.
That's insane.
Yeah, it was huge. 1/10 of an inch, 1/4 of an inch, something like that. It was fairly significant, right? And then from that, it created this giant tsunami wave that slammed the coast of Japan. And it was just absolutely devastating. And it was like the triple effect, right? You know, the earthquake shakes everything, causes the destruction. Then you have a tsunami comes in that causes even more destruction, which part of that destruction from the tsunami wave is the Fukushima nuclear reactor on the coast. And so that building gets destroyed with the reactor and it goes into meltdown, right? So as the building collapses and all the dust gets released into the air, it creates this giant, nuclear radioactive cloud that's going out to sea. And so during this time, going back to when the earthquake first hit, we're in port in Yokosuka. So we're not that far away. So when it starts shaking, we are shaking, right?
That boat is.
Yeah. And the weird thing is I remember that day, there were crews in the back aft on the fantail of the ship, and they were installing some new equipment, and they'd been shaking the ship all day, little minor things.
Oh, okay. So
when they did that, and I'm literally in my office is way up in the front of the ship, right? So when that happens, and I'm my chair is jumping, I'm like, man, what are these guys doing? Right?
They're testing their new equipment.
Right. I'm like, man, that is incredible that they can shake the ship like that. Well, then a few minutes later, someone comes running into our office, turn the news on, turn the news on, turn the news on. I'm like, whoa, what's going on, man? So we turn the news on and we're seeing that there was just an earthquake. Right. So now we're like, oh man.
Not just an earthquake.
Well, right. Well, we don't know about the tsunami yet.
Well, I mean, an earth shattering.
Oh yeah. It was huge.
Changes the trajectory of the earth.
Right. And so being in Japan, of course I have my wife, my kids with me, and I'm like, I need to go see if they're okay, but I can't get off the ship. Right.
Are you on lockdown?
We're locked down. Right. So not only that, but I can't call home and find out how they're doing because cell lines are knocked out.
EMP.
Well, no, there was no EMP. It's just that the system was over flooded.
Oh, right? Okay.
People trying to call, people trying to,
it wasn't close enough to hit.
Destroyed.
It wasn't close enough to create any kind of EMP.
Well, no, earthquakes won't create an EMP.
I thought they did. Like a shock wave.
No, it creates a shock wave, but that's not EMP. We can get into the whole science of that at another time. So cell towers are down. They're, what cell towers are still up. They're flooded. So trying to get communications going is just not happening, right? And so it went several hours before I was able to find out if my boys were okay. And they ended up being safe, by the way. They were fine. I mean, it shook our house. Don't get me wrong, but there was no damage where we were. And so from there, now I'm stuck on the ship overnight, right? It's not even my duty day.
Oh man.
So
you're like just got off of it or something, or you're supposed
probably. So I haven't been home yet. I haven't been able to check on my boys and see if they're okay. But at least I got a text through to ask if they're okay, and got a reply that they were. So finally the next morning it got to a point where I was able to go home and at least spend a little bit of time and do some laundry, because I got a call later that afternoon for everybody to come back to the ship because we're going out, right? So mind you that during this whole time I'm trying to send the text home and find out how we're doing. That's when we're learning about the tsunami, and we're watching it live on the news. And, we're seeing the coastline that we recognize, right? We're seeing, the communities that some of us have visited, because, Sendai and Fukushima, they're north of Tokyo, about an hour and a half north. So it doesn't take much to get up there and go hit one of the resorts and spend some time on the beach in the summertime. So we're seeing that be absolutely demolished. We're watching people live get swept out to sea, right? And so now we're going to go be a part of this recovery effort. Oh, but mind you, there's a big nuclear cloud out there in the sea. So we go sailing right up into that thing because that's apparently what we do. But our job as we're out there, we're off the coast of Sendai where it happened. We're launching helicopters to go help and bring help and supplies and locate people and stuff like that. But our job as the ship, other than being a platform for the helicopters to launch off of, is kind of the same thing that they did after Hurricane Katrina, right? Going house to house and seeing who's inside, right? But we're doing that out in the ocean. So think about that.
With the nuclear cloud.
Well, we're up in the nuclear cloud
already anyway.
Right? But now these houses that were on land just the day before are now out in the middle of the ocean, bobbing on the surface. And inside of these houses are families.
That's absolutely just wow.
Yeah. So it's the middle of the day. So, people are home. There's babies that were home with their mamas and they just drowned in their living room. And these are, sub-freezing temperatures as well. And, because it's in March and it's,
oh yeah,
north. So it's,
true.
There's snow everywhere and now nuclear snow, which,
I've been to South Korea in March and it's still snow and it's very cold.
Oh yeah.
Yep.
So,
Yeah,
it's like
same.
that wind coming off the mountains is bone penetrating. So there's people that are trapped in these various buildings that are, hats off to our helicopter crew, because they ended up, I don't know how many pockets of survivors they found, like when they were flying onto land. And they found, like in a elementary school, some people that survived literally when the wave came in, like they went up to the roof of this elementary school. It was a 3-story building. And even then the water came up over the edge.
Wow.
Like the wave was so high, came up over the edges. It completely knocked out the airport. But these people are on top of the building and it's coming up over the lip of the walls onto the roof, right? But as the waters receded, they were able to go back down into the building to at least get out of the elements and like try and get some heat, burning things and stuff like that, and huddling close together and body heat and all that. And one thing I'll say is the crew of my ship at that time are phenomenal people. Leadership sucked, but our crew was awesome. When we found out about these folks in the school that our helicopter crew had just found, within 30 minutes, I think 30 minutes to an hour, we had 15 boxes full of clothes that people had run down to their racks, grabbed whatever warm clothes they could find, like civilian clothes, to throw in these boxes so that the helicopter crews could start taking warm clothes out to them. We raided our ship's store to get toothbrushes, toothpaste, soap, snacks, whatever, food, to throw in these boxes to take out to these people within an hour, right?
Wow.
15 huge boxes. We're giving up our coats type of thing.
Wow.
And to help other people. And, of course, that launch, what ended up being called Operation Tomodachi. Tomodachi, Japanese, means friend. And so that was like a big thing, the collaborative effort between, really it was the American military that did a lot of the work, because the Japanese military could have done the bulk of the work, but they're trying to recover from that themselves, So it was more like, hey, we're going to do this together, but you guys need to focus on your families too.
Yeah.
So we kind of took over, initially we ran the whole thing until they could get to a point where they're like, okay, we kind of got our footing under us. We know what's going on. We can start stepping in and doing what we can, because they had to get over the shock of it. That was massive. There was no way whatsoever to predict that would happen. And that there was a amount of shock that they had to get over, and rightly so. Right. So now, we're dealing with that. We're going through, and, each house that we see has a family in it. Every car that we see floating in the water has people in it. There's trucks, there's Connex boxes, there's boats that are flipped over that, 24, 40 hours before had people in them. And so we're having to deal with this. And so that's one of the things that, when we talk about trauma and people coming back with PTSD, is it's not always, a situation where you're being shot at. Sometimes it's stuff like this, right? Where you're having to, see these houses that have these newborn babies that are now drowned in their living rooms and floating in a house that's out in the middle of the ocean where it's not supposed to be. And there's multiple of these. And so
that's very mind boggling.
It is. It even still today, it's hard for me to wrap my head around how all of that happened.
And so quickly too.
And so quickly. And even though I know like the science of it, I understand how it happened. It's still trying to wrap my mind around it.
Just I can't imagine.
They're looking at it.
Yeah, you're physically there,
and not just me. It was all of us.
Yeah,
and so that's one of those things. Like it's weird to talk about survivor's guilt. If you've heard of that term before, and someone's out there revving their engine. If it's Camaro, I'll be cool with it. If it's a Ford, I'm gonna. But that's one of those things that I've had to wrestle with over the years, because when I have the nightmares, it's going back to that. It's going back to what were they doing when this happened? What the faces don't go away. You remember those.
Yeah.
And that's what we were doing for the next week. Is we were just floating around, trying to help whoever we could, the pockets of survivors, but at the same time, now we also have these situations that we have to deal with. And that's not something that you get rid of. This is something that all of us have to kind of carry with us for the rest of our life. And, as I get into this discussion part of it, where, we're going to talk about how I ultimately became saved and started processing through that, is the big thing that I learned is you're never going to get rid of this, right? It's just learning how to carry it and how to do it in a healthy way.
Like cope with it.
Not really cope,
No.
but we'll get to that. We'll get to that. And some of you listening will already know what I'm talking about, especially if you've been through Regen or Celebrate Recovery, especially the guys that have been through Camp Hope. Y'all know what I'm talking about. We'll get there. So shortly after that, we come back in and, back in port, this is 2011, another year and a half goes by. Now we're coming up into 2013 and we're doing, that chain of command leaves. We get a new chain of command in. And by the way, this new chain of command that came in was awesome, right? New captain, new XO, new master chief. I got a new chief and all of them were awesome. Great, great people. I'm still friends with most of them.
That's good.
And I only say most of them because some of them aren't on Facebook and it's just hard to, keep in touch. But they knew what happened to me with, the whole previous chain of command. And they were in my corner. So going from a situation where on the same ship, going from a situation where literally I'm looking out into the ocean and I just want to jump. I want to die. I want to end it all. Right. To we've gone through hell. Somehow I'm still alive. I haven't offed myself. I have a small little cadre of people that are rallying around me and encouraging me and supporting me. And really, they were encouraging me to pursue Christ. I remember that. My buddy Dre and even Ryan. Ryan was, man, you just need to accept Jesus. I'm telling you what.
That's awesome, though.
Oh, hee-haw. I love that guy. But they were always encouraging me to pursue Jesus. And I shrugged them off. I'm like, no, that's not my thing. I was pretty adamantly atheist back then, which was another huge part of my problem, right? Because when you're going through things like that and you want to continue to deny the giver of hope, the creator of hope, the creator of love and all things good, you're just inviting more chaos into your life, really. And so that's what I was doing, right? I kept going through these situations that, cause trauma or they are trauma themselves. And I don't have that hope. So I just kept going into a downward spiral every time, just kind of speeding it up as we went along. But they supported me. The new chain of command comes in. They know what's going on. They know the truth. They see right through it. There was this whole poetic justice with the guy that lied. And I'll tell you about that another time. But they know that he lied and that came out over time. And now they're fighting for me to be reinstated as an E6. But this is also at the height of sequestration in the military.
What is that?
Sequestration was when everything in Iraq and Afghanistan had just taken so long that it started taking a huge financial toll on the economy. Our economy can't take prolonged, guns over butter, right?
Okay, I've just never heard that term, I guess.
Yeah.
Okay.
So we're cutting corners everywhere we can, right? Like even in MWR, on the softball fields in MWR will only pay for one umpire instead of two, right? During softball games. Like sequestration. We don't get trophies because we got to use that money for, funding the war effort. Stuff like that, right? But what that also meant was that when I put my request in, initially I'd put a request in before the the old CO left to be reinstated back to first class, right? And of course he denies it, shoots it down, says, kick rocks, pound sand. I'm like, thanks. You knew it was all a sham, but you don't care. Roger that. So
I would not have expected anything less.
Right. I mean, I knew it was coming, but a little sliver of hope. So the new captain comes in, Commander Ring. Phenomenal guy. Like, so energetic, so encouraging type of guy that, like, he was the type that whenever we're out at sea and we have to do a freshwater washdown on the ship, get all the salt water out before we go into port, that, like, he plugs his phone into the 1MC, which is like the big ship speaker.
Oh,
and he's playing music for us, right?
That's awesome.
Classic rock and all this other stuff. Like, just to keep us jazzed up and energized, right? Like, very personable. Great captain. So he's in my corner. He writes up this stellar endorsement to my request that's saying, hey, this guy's great. He's been doing a lot of great things that you wouldn't expect someone to do after an NJP like that. But he's been doing it. He's been stepping up. And, I remember this last line so clearly. The Navy would be well served to reinstate Petty Officer Bracamonte to first class petty officer and retain him in naval service. He wrote that. And I'm like, wow, like, what better, like, type of thing to redeem a situation like that. And I didn't realize it now, but, like, that's at that point in time, that was God showing me, hey, look what I can do. Follow me, type of thing.
Yeah.
But I didn't see it at that time. So we send that off to Big Navy. Big Navy comes back and says, no, we can't do it. They don't give any reason. They just say, no, we can't do it. Okay. So now termination of my career is right in front of me. Mm-hmm. There's nothing I can do about it because, everyone listening who served knows we have a thing called high-year tenure. So in the Navy as an E5, the farthest you can go is 12 years. And I was at 11 and a half.
Oh, gosh.
Yeah. So I have to get out. I don't have a choice. So my other option at the time was also to re-enlist in the reserves, because in the reserves you have longer, higher tenure than in active duty. So I do that. I go into I sign up to go into the reserves, but now I have to, finish up my tour, do all the things. I'm job hunting at the same time because, of course, I need a job. But I get a break. I get picked up by Boeing, right? Over in Dallas. And so I know I have a job before I leave the ship. And I'm like, oh, at least that, right? But now, as I'm getting ready and I'm going through all the administrivia of getting ready to transfer and leave Japan, now, instead of my wife and kids coming with me, my wife slides the paper across the table and says, sign this. Well, in Japan, all it takes is a signature for divorce.
Wow.
That's it. You don't go through all the court rigmarole.
You just sign a legal document and
not even really a legal document. It's just a form from City Hall. Literally, it's a form where you sign it. Someone goes down and turns into City Hall, and that's it. You're done. But, part of that, and this is, I encourage you guys to go on YouTube and do some research. There are documentaries about foreign dads. And when I say foreign, I mean foreign in Japan, like, British, American, Dutch, whatever, who married Japanese, had kids, and got divorced. And for a simple act of trying to meet their kids and spend some time with them, the ex-wife called the police and said that the children were kidnapped. So now these guys are sitting in a Japanese jail for I don't know how many years each because they just wanted to spend 20, 30 minutes with their kids and go have lunch with them. And the ex-wife didn't like that. So there's literally, as I'm leaving Japan, literally nothing I could do unless I want to end up in Japanese jail. And that just makes the situation worse. Right?
Wow.
And so at the same time, like, there's nothing I can do about it, because now I got to go back to America. Like, I'm literally backed into a corner here, and I can't even do anything to try and have a relationship with my children. Right? Or else
she's not going to allow it.
Yeah, she's not going to allow it. So coming back to America, I'm a brand new civilian. I don't have an identity of my own. My identity is wrapped up in being in the Navy, being a sailor. So everyone I meet, I'm giving them my resume, right, of being in the Navy. Nobody wants to hear that. I can't tell you how many people I drove away because they didn't want to associate with that, because that's all I was. I was not someone who's going to, hey, let's talk about hockey. Let's talk about baseball. You know, I'm not going to talk about the Cowboys because they can't get to the Super Bowl. But the Rangers, they'll win the World Series.
Oh, yeah.
But I won't have those conversations. I won't have conversations about, like, hey, you know, I went and tried this out type of thing. I'm like, everything comes back to, this is who, you know, what I did in the Navy. And so that just annoyed everybody. Right. And I drove everybody away. Well, the one person that didn't drive away a year later, you know, other than my family, well, actually, let me table that. When I came back to America, started off in the Dallas-Fort Worth area. By this time, my relationship with my dad had been restored, right? He had come to Christ a few years before.
Wow.
And so now I'm at a point, you know, he spent his whole life as a practicing Jew and hated Christians, couldn't stand Christians, until he had an encounter that put him on his knees, where Jesus told him in no uncertain terms, I'm real. I am the Messiah. I am. Right? And so he's like, hey, Roger that. I understand now. And so now my dad is a Messianic Jew. But to take that a step further, not only is he a Messianic Jew, but he's also going through studies and the pipeline to become a rabbi. Wow. So I come home and my dad is now a Messianic rabbi, or really a pastor, if we want to look at it that way. So I come home as an atheist, and he's patient with me this whole time, this whole, you know, year and a half after I come home, and I'm freshly divorced. My kids are stripped away from me. I'm going through hell. But I have in my pocket, and I don't realize it, the best counseling that I could have ever imagined. So my dad and I, not only is our relationship restored, but now he's pouring into me. He's investing into me and giving me that spiritual inheritance that I never had growing up. And so now, finally, I'm learning what it means to be a man, but I'm not really taking it in just yet. So about a year goes by living in Dallas, you know, working, stuff like that. And I meet a girl in the Dallas side who is a prior Marine. So we click right away, right? Because she gets, you know, the whole, you know, dealing with, you know, the identity and stuff like that. But one of the things that I was struggling with was codependency at the time. And I didn't know, you know, how to be the right type of person in a relationship.
Yeah, you were
Everything
never
was still
shown.
me. I want what I want. So we were both very destructive to each other. We didn't realize it. You know, it wasn't intentional, but it was just, she wanted what she wanted. I wanted what I wanted. And, you know, as long as I got what I wanted, that's what mattered. Same thing for her. And it was just a very toxic relationship that neither of us initially had a problem with. And eventually we broke up, you know, thank God. Um, but interestingly, it was during that time that I finally got on my knees and I accepted Christ. And it was ironically, it was because of her. Yeah, I know, right?
Wow.
And the weird thing was, okay, so during that time when I would be over there late at night, because, you know, we're doing adult late at night things. Afterwards, you know, she.
Sorry, that was funny how you put that adult twister. I don't know.
Well, she would go into the bathroom to like brush her teeth and get ready for bed and stuff like that, and the whole time, like, she's playing worship music. Which, looking back, I'm like, really? But
maybe she was trying.
Yeah, maybe. But over time, that rubbed off on me, right? Proximity type of thing. And she was playing, you know, little snippets, you know, from Joyce Meyer and a couple other, you know, well-known speakers from the faith. And I would hear these things, you know, what they were saying. And eventually things started clicking in my head until finally in November 2014, I finally accepted Christ. You know, in my 30s, you know, caused so much damage, but I'm finally accepting Christ. Well, I'm still in this, you know, inappropriate relationship.
Yeah.
You know, but we start going to her church, and I'm starting to learn what it is to be a Christian. Fast forward to May of 2015, when everything falls apart at the end of May, beginning of June timeframe. Everything falls apart in that relationship. She, you know, tells me to leave, and we had just bought a house.
Oh,
we were getting ready to get married, and we had
just
just bought a house together.
Wow.
And she tells me I have to leave. Well, ended up like she was the one that ended up leaving. I stayed in the house because we couldn't leave the house empty, right?
Yeah.
If you leave a house empty, other people are going to occupy it for you,
Yep.
right? So I ended up staying in the house. She left and went somewhere else. I don't know. But at the same time, I kept going to that church. And it got to a point where, you know, after a breakup, you can't keep seeing the same person. It just makes it worse. But I'd gone in and I was talking to one of the pastors, you know, just trying to get a little bit of counseling, pastoral care. And he looks across the table at me and he's like, I don't know why you were seeing her anyway. Hurt people hurt people. And while that may be true, that's not good counseling to give to someone who's clearly hurting at the moment, going through a devastating situation. And that's his excuse. And he thinks that, you know, the way he just says it so nonchalantly, I'm like, and you're a pastor?
Man, there's sadly a lot out there like that.
Yeah. So between that and having to see her every week, I was like, I can't stay here. So I started looking for a new church, right? The whole time, like I'm still, you know, drinking heavily. I want what I want type of thing. You know, I'm still in that limbo stage. I'm a new Christian, but I still want what I want. Finally, I walk in the doors over at Watermark Community Church in Dallas. And it's a Tuesday night, so they have the porch, which for those of you that don't know what I'm talking about, the porch is a huge, huge ministry at Watermark. Every Tuesday night, 2,000 to 3,000, 4,000 young adults.
That's a lot.
A lot. And they come together to worship Jesus on a weeknight. But here's the kicker. They also simulcast it to other churches across the country. So Tuesday night at Watermark in Dallas, you have 2,000 to 3,000 just coming onto that campus. Then you have the Fort Worth campus. Then you have a church down in Houston, another church down in Waco, another church over in Virginia, a couple churches in San Diego, another church in LA, another church here. All these big churches across the country are simulcasting the porch. So where it was 2,000 to 3,000 young adults in Dallas, multiply that across the country. Young adults coming in on Tuesday night to worship Jesus. It's amazing. It's one of the most beautiful things I've ever seen. But amongst the crowd, and I walk, and somebody notices me. They've never seen me before. And they're like, hey, you look new.
You're like, dang it.
I'm like, yes, I am.
Diplomacy has failed.
Well, no, because I was in a place where I was hurting and I knew I needed to be seen.
Some
And,
people don't like that.
well, right. But when you're at the bottom, it's like, I need to be seen, before I lose
Before you start digging.
yeah. And when you've already hit rock bottom, there's not much further you can go. So someone grabs me up. They're like, hey, you look new. Let me connect you with somebody. So I started talking with this group of folks, and they were really, really nice people, but I didn't really connect with them very well. But at the end of the service, and this is one thing Watermark is great at, is directing people to community. Because that's their whole thing. It's in their name, Watermark Community Church, right? At the end of every porch service, they do this thing where they say, hey, if you're not in community, we have small community groups for you, right? Where men, y'all can go off this direction, ladies, y'all go off this direction. And there's these big rooms where you sit in and you meet other guys, right? Or, ladies meet other ladies. And that night I met a guy named Oscar and another guy named Mike, who are awesome dudes. Oscar was actually an Air Force veteran. And right away I could tell he was a veteran. So I got someone I'm connecting with now.
Okay.
And slowly they start teaching me over time how important it is to be in community, and that, the whole idea of being a Christian is that, and this is going to sound kind of funny, but anyone who's run track in high school will know that track is an individual sport that you do as a team. Or I guess you could say the same thing about swimming too. And that's kind of how Christianity is, right?
You're supporting each other. You're pushing each other.
You do it as an individual, but you have a team that's supporting you and encouraging you and pushing you. And that's what community is. And that's how these guys were spurring me on. And they gave me an outlet that when things were going wrong, they're telling me, hey, call me, right? When it's going on. And so I had that outlet finally. So I started, digging in at Regen, and not at Regen, at Watermark. And one of the good things about Watermark is they have this ministry, not a program, it's a ministry called Regeneration. So I'm going on Tuesday nights, I'm going to the porch, and, I'm meeting people, starting to get up a friend base of people, right? Good people, the people you want to have in your lives, right? Change your playground, change your playmates. Well, I've done all that now. I've completely changed my playground, and now I'm getting new playmates, the right kind. And as it turned out, even growing up in Austin, I had friends from high school that had over the years moved up to Dallas, and they were going to Watermark. And so an old friend of mine messaged me one day. We were having a conversation, and she said, I've gone through Regen. My husband leads in this other, money ministry, financial care and stuff like that. But we both think you should look at Regen. And so I'm like, okay. So I went and checked it out, and they sucked me in right away. Right. And Regeneration, for those of you that don't know, is a lot like Celebrate Recovery. And it really the only difference between Regen and Celebrate Recovery is administrative, right? So just small things. It's still 12 steps going through and recovering from life itself sometimes and all the different traumas, but focusing on your relationship with Christ. And so I went through Regen. I went through the 12 months. And, for those of you that were listening a couple of weeks ago when I had the Regeneration episode, we talk about how that works with Dave Bruscus, the pastor over Regeneration. And so I went through that whole thing, and it was a beautiful experience, man. It was beautiful. You are in a group with 12 other guys who are going through their own stuff. Maybe it's similar, maybe it's not. right? But they're going through their stuff, and they're there to walk through it and be your battle buddy at the same time, right? So for the 12 steps and over that year, I'm focusing on the things, right? I'm focusing on, the alcoholism, the hedonism, right? Chasing skirt all the time. I'm focusing on the different things, the codependency issues that I was having, the traumas that I'd experienced, the PTSD that I was carrying. I'm focusing on all those things individually, right? At the same time as all the other ones. And I'm going through and I'm doing my step 4. I'm taking accountability. I do step 5, I'm like bringing it to light and having that conversation. And so now at this point in time, I actually have 2 community groups. I have my main community group with the church. Like I have 3 or 4 brothers that these are the guys I'm spending all the time with. And then the rest of the time I'm spending time with these 12 guys where we're going through battle with each other, right? And from that experience is when I started learning there's more to being a Christian than I ever thought. And that's when I started experiencing the true recovery from everything that I went through. And I learned the importance of community. These guys that are always spurring me on to continue pursuing Christ, by pursuing each other. And that they encourage me, I encourage them. And we're in our lives daily. Like, hey, how are you doing? How can I pray for you? And how to recognize when things are going wrong and turn to Jesus. And that's, like the last few steps is learning how to make that a continuous thing. So earlier when I was talking about like, you're not coping with it, it's learning how to redirect, right? So I start, like, if I go into a crowded area, because crowds, I can't do it. You know what I'm talking about.
Oh, I know.
Yeah. So when I start feeling that wave of anxiety come over me, I know how to recognize that now. And it's not coping with it so much as understanding what the triggers are, what the feelings are, and then redirecting my focus from that. I still got to remove myself from the situation, right? Like if it's shoulder to shoulder type of thing, I'm like, nope, gotta go out. And luckily, thank God, my wife is, now, she's a saint. She understands that. She gets that. And so she won't hold that against me. She gets it. So like, we went into Buc-ee's down in, Marietaville or whatever, the one halfway between here and Austin. And it was packed. And I got to a point where like, I can't do this. I gotta go. I had to get out of there.
Man, that's giving me anxiety just talking about it.
Yeah, I'm sorry, brother.
No, you're good. I'm just saying, no, I understand it's powerful.
And so the tools that we're given through this ministry is not to cope with it, but to understand, remove yourself from the situation and just get into prayer, right? Because when you're focusing on God, when you're in the face of a loving God who wants to carry you through this, really in scripture, he's telling us, let me carry this for you. And when you learn how to do that, because like we were talking about, a couple episodes ago in that conversation with Dave Bruskus, is nobody teaches us how to do that. So when you go through these ministries like Celebrate Recovery or Regeneration, they're literally metaphorically holding your hand and walking you through that process. Here's how to do that. And so I'm learning how to do that now. I'm in community. I'm, all the things, and ended up finishing, really commencing is what we call it. Commencing from Regeneration almost a year later. And then I got into leading. I was starting to lead groups in Regeneration now. And my relationship with Christ, my level of knowledge and understanding of what it means to be a Christian had grown exponentially during this whole process. So now, because of that, I'm able to have a deeper, more meaningful relationship with Christ. And that is really what brings a lot of the healing, a lot of the, I can let this go now type of thing. Like earlier when I was talking about my whole identity was wrapped up in who I was, now my identity is in Christ and who he made me to be. So like, from all the conversations that you and I have had in general, I don't bring up, hey, I'm Navy sailor, stuff like that. We talk about the things, right? We talk about life. We're able to have those normal conversations because I was finally able to let that go and let God fill my life. And so we're able to have normal conversations. Now we're able to encourage each other in prayer, reach out to each other. Hey, how did this meeting go? Type of thing. And hey, I'm praying for you, and we're able to have those conversations. And so that's the big thing. And that's where I came and I was able to reset my identity. I'm able to go through life now and understand that in any bad situation, because there were other bad situations that happened after that, but in the grand scheme of things, they're insignificant, and I know I'm at a place spiritually and emotionally now because I was able to develop my relationship with Christ, where I've grown in my emotional maturity. I've grown in my spiritual maturity. And I can say, hey, in 100 years, what difference is it going to make? I will be face to face with the Creator, God of all, King of Kings, the I am, right? And from that, I carry a continuous hope and that promise that we have to be with him for eternity. And I have a group of community brothers, just like you do. And even though we're not in the same community group, here at our church, it doesn't matter. We can still have that same community type relationship where we're brothers. We're both pursuing Christ and we can both encourage each other. And we do the same thing in my group, in my small group. And those are the things that when we're serving each other, that brings a lot of that hope and that healing and the recovery, and that's what this show is all about, right? Is that we get to share our similarities and the traumas that we went through and then bring it to the glory of God, where he takes that, the junk that we went through, the chaos, the hurt, the depression, the different things, but he makes it beautiful, right? Because now in my life, since I came from that, at a certain point, I did leave Watermark. I went to Cottonwood Creek Community Church over in Allen, which I will say for anyone that lives in Allen and has been to Cottonwood Creek, the only reason I'm not at Cottonwood Creek anymore. We're in an office and our youth pastor just walked by and waved at us through the window. The only reason I'm not at Cottonwood Creek anymore is because I moved. I moved to the other side of the Metroplex. Otherwise, I would still be there. Awesome church, amazing people. Pastor Jon Bracamonte, awesome pastor, right? Only reason I left is because I moved over to this side of the Metroplex when I took a job at a different company. And then I also met my now wife, Kim, who is an absolutely incredible woman because, we go back to what I was talking about earlier, how I lost my kids in that divorce. This is a woman who, because of her relationship with God, because she is such a godly woman pursuing her relationship with Christ, that she is going online. I'm going to use the word behind my back because there's really, in the English language, there's not a better way to put it, right? She's going online behind my back and looking for my boys for me. Right.
That's huge.
Right. She's a saint. She's going online behind my back to try and find my boys because it's not that she just accepts that she's their stepmom. Because of the love of Christ that she has in her heart, she wants to engage with them. She wants to have a relationship with them as much as I do. And she's never even met them. But she's looking for them for me because she loves God and she loves me. What woman does this?
That's rare, my friend.
Right?
That's rare.
I found a gem.
A godly woman,
Right?
I would hope, you know.
But that's where I am. Because I pursued Christ, because I gave up on all the things that I wanted and I replaced those things. And I'm praying, constantly, God, take the things that I want from me. Align my heart to yours so that the things I want are the things that you want for me. Right? And he has bringing me through recovery. He has blessed my life in so many ways just because I got out of his way and I let him do what he does. Because how many of us do the same thing? We're like, God, I want you to do this my way. And it never happens. And we're always so frustrated. But I learned to step back and say, however it looks, let your will be done and let me be happy with that.
I mean, once you accept that and you give it to him, I mean, I feel like he knows better how to live our lives or that plan for us. So,
right. And so he's brought me to a place where, not only was I looking for the right woman to be married with, but he developed me into the right man to be married to that right woman. You know what I mean? And so that's a big thing that a lot of us miss these days is we want the right person, but what are we doing to ourselves for ourselves to prepare us to be the right mate for that person that we want?
It's hardly looked at that way.
Right.
It's still in society looked at what can I get out of the relationship? Mm-hmm. And that's why divorce is like what, 80, 90%.
It's ridiculous.
It's a game or something.
Yeah.
Getting married is a game.
Yeah.
To people.
And so when Kim and I got married, we got married with the understanding that because we're both believers and followers of Jesus Christ, divorce is off the table. It's not an option.
It shouldn't be.
Because it shouldn't be. It's not supposed to be an option. And so that's how we look at it. It's not supposed to be an option. We're in this thick or thin.
That's how it should be.
Exactly. And so that's how we look at it. That's how we fight for our marriage every day. And I would argue, even though we have our arguments like any other couple would.
Wouldn't be human if you didn't.
Right. Because of where both of us are at in our relationship with Christ. She has an incredible story as well, by the way, of trauma and redemption and recovery. Because of what we went through, and because of our recovery, and because of where we're at now, I would argue that our marriage, our relationship is far healthier than a majority of other relationships that I see. Maybe not here at FOTP. I'll caveat that. Pastor Chuck, we love you, buddy. Doing an awesome job. Pastor Doug, you too. But it's those important things. We have community. And that's one thing I love about our church here is that they're always spurring us to have community. And as we wrap this up here tonight, that's what I want to portray, with this episode and with this whole podcast is there's hope. You have to die to yourself. And by die to yourself, I mean, get out of your own way.
Gotta die daily on top of that.
Right. It's a daily thing. It's like any other relationship. You have to make the choice daily to pursue Christ, pursue your wife, pursue relationships with other men, other women. If you're a woman, if you're a man, don't pursue relationships with other women. Don't do that. That's wrong. Bad. And same vice versa, if you're married. But it's those are the things that bring Jesus into our lives and in a really real and tangible way, right? Not just reading our Bible every day, but also being in community. And that's what I want to offer up, with this podcast is there is hope. When you're going through the darkness, when you're going through what seems like hell, there is hope and you can find it. We talked with Kenny Thomas from PTSD Foundation a few weeks ago and Camp Hope down in Houston, great organization. They will help. They will help you get there, right? If you're not around Houston, they will help you get there. And then they will give you that community, You know, you go through Regen, you go through Celebrate Recovery, Kairos, Life Recovery, whatever the program is, whatever the ministry is, you will find community in there. You will find other broken people who are pursuing Christ. Their traumas might be different from yours, but it's still trauma. And they're trying to recover just like you are. So if you're hearing this, I want you to know there is hope. You are loved 100%. You're not just loved by us. You're loved by a God who created the universe, who is the King of Kings above all. Think about that. You are a child of God, right? And he loves you. He wants that relationship with you. Just lean into it, right? Stop fighting. Just be held. Let him hold you. Let him do it. And you will find recovery. I can promise you that, because that's what he does. And he loves you. And I want to thank you guys for listening. I know that these last 2 episodes have been long, kind of hard to get through, but you know, it points to the beauty in recovery and stuff like that. So thank you guys for listening. And Josh, thank you for taking up my role and putting me in the hot seat.
Yeah, man, it felt good for once.
I understand the stress now.
You see? I appreciate you guys. Thank you, John.
Indeed. So for those of you who are listening on Spotify, thank you. Please remember to subscribe to the channel. Share this with your friends. If you know other veterans, please pass this along to them. Hopefully they can find some hope in this too, and get into, I guess that would be the right way to say that, into some sort of recovery ministry, one way or another. You know, I would say, I'm going to go out on a limb here and say one is not better than the other, even though I'm biased towards Regen. However, they're all phenomenal programs. They're all going to point you to Jesus. And that is where you find recovery. So have hope. Hope does exist, and you'll find it in him. So please get on, share this with your friends. Find us on Facebook. We have a community. Keep the conversations going. We're on Audible. We're on iHeart. Of course, you're listening to us on Spotify. You can find us on Pocket Casts, Google Podcasts, I think, as well. Share this with your friends, and we thank you guys so much for listening. We'll see you guys next week.